The United Nations officially came into existence on 24 October 1945 when the Charter had been ratified by China, France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, the United States, and by a majority of other signatories. The name United Nations was coined by the United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt and first used in the Declaration by United Nations of January 1, 1942 during Second World War. The Security Council, at its 1034th meeting, held on the 7th of May, 1963, unanimously decided to recommend to the General Assembly that the state of Kuwait be admitted to membership to the United Nations. Following this recommendation, the General Assembly, at its fourth special session, in its 1203rd plenary meeting on 14th May 1963, adopted Resolution 1872 admitting the state of Kuwait to membership in the United Nations. As a result, the state of Kuwait became the 111th member state of the United Nations. His Highness the late Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, serving as foreign minister at that time, addressed the General Assembly at its fourth special session. The flag-raising ceremony of the state of Kuwait at United Nations headquarters took place on the 15th of May, 1963.
So the 7th of May, the UN Security Council recommended to the General Assembly that Kuwait should become a member of the United Nations. A week later, on 14th of May, 60 years ago, and the General Assembly adopted its resolution, and Kuwait became an integral part of the UN since then. Kuwait has been always committed to multilateralism and fulfillment of the principles of the UN Charter. The country was a non-permanent member of the Security Council twice, during the 1970s and during 2018 and 2019. And indeed, during Kuwait's June 2019 Security Council presidency, Kuwait presented, and the Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2474 on missing persons in armed conflict. It was the first time ever that the Security Council adopted a resolution to address this issue. As the President of the General Assembly highlighted during his recent visit here, that Kuwait has been playing a leadership role in advancing the agenda of UN Security Council reform. And Kuwait is co-chairing with Austria to effectively facilitate discussions and ideas for the reform of the Security Council, which has been historically really difficult agenda. On humanitarian and development side, most recently, the state of Kuwait took immediate actions to generously support people and communities of Syria and then Turkey right after the massive earthquakes. And Kuwait is the only country from this region who supported through the United Nations. Currently, there are 27 ongoing wars and conflicts. The invasion to Ukraine and conflict in Sudan, which is to say that the United Nations and its member states have been playing a critical role, let alone in passing two UN resolutions over the course of 1990 and 1991 to condemn the illegal invasion to Kuwait.
The 70th United Nations General Assembly session was a milestone in the organization's history, especially following the adoption of the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals. In the state of Kuwait, the international community can be rest assured of a committed partner in development that will play an important role in the international efforts towards helping developing nations achieve these Sustainable Development Goals. The state of Kuwait has announced that it will continue to provide development assistance loans within the program of the Kuwait Fund's operations over the coming 15 years in the amount of 15 billion US dollars to achieve the noble and ambitious sustainable development agenda.
Indeed, there are diverse UN agencies, funds, and programs, as well as offices. In fact, the state of Kuwait hosts the Kuwait Joint Support Office, we called KJSO, with around 83 staff members, providing critical operational support to 18 United Nations field offices in the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and South America, including UN missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Haiti. At the UN house here, there are 11 offices: UNICEF, UNHCR, WFP, Habitat, ILO, DSS, IOM, WHO, UN OCHA, the UN Resident Coordinator's Office, and UNDP. The state of Kuwait was also one of the first countries who signed this special agreement with UNDP 55 years ago. It is also important to note that Kuwait has partnerships with non-resident agencies such as ESCOA, UN Women, and UN Environment Program, just to name a few.
This is a very important year, marking the 60th year of working together with the UN and the state of Kuwait. And WHO is an integral part of the UNCT, and we believe in synergizing our efforts and contributing to the common goals of United Nations, and in that way particularly SDG 3 and other SDGs, and we will continue to do so in times to come, inshallah, in whatever capacity we are asked by the government to support them.
Since its membership to the United Nations, the state of Kuwait has made significant contributions to the work of the United Nations and has been an active partner working closely to promoting the noble principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter. The permanent mission of the state of Kuwait to the United Nations has been responsible for carrying out the state of Kuwait's participation at the United Nations.
This partnership between the United Nations and Kuwait covered many aspects of life. The Kuwait government supported the United Nations in mitigating the effect of any crisis in any part of the world, also working with different organizations. I mean by that the institutes, the agencies, and the programs that are part of the United Nations. But the continuation of the partnership between the United Nations and Kuwait has been enhanced after Kuwait becoming a member, and also after the agreement signed between Kuwait government and different agencies of the UN, enabling them to work as resident agencies inside Kuwait to realize the agenda of Kuwait and the strategy of Kuwait. I give an example of this. United Nations Human Settlement Program, which signed an agreement in 2004, ratified by the Law 21 in 2006, which enabled our agency to operate and carry out mandatory work inside Kuwait, and enabled us to realize Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular SDG 11.
Well, also as you may know, ILO is a tripartite organization, so the government, workers, and employers representatives are members in ILO. So we work closely and equally, with each party. to implementing many activities, supporting them how to implement their international obligations, and also building the capacity of the representative of each party in all the fields that ILO work in.
UNDP has a history with the state of Kuwait. We have been here since the 60s. The main role of UNDP in Kuwait is technical support for the government through our main partner, which is the GSSCPD, headed by Dr. Khalid Mehdi, the Secretary General of GSSCPD. So now what happens is that we meet on a regular basis. We bring ideas for the development of projects in Kuwait. And at the same time, GSSCPD also they come with ideas. So if we agree on the idea, we formulate the project and we implement it together. And we at the same time evaluate the progress and also cherish the success of the project when implemented.
The state of Kuwait has blazed for itself a path to development marked by distinction, by achieving almost all of the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, before their scheduled date of 2015. This is in addition to its commitment to implement and support all of the post-2015 development plans to attain sustainable development in its three dimensions: economic, social, and environmental.
Yes, the United Nations in Kuwait honors the importance of national ownerships. Any sustainable development solutions have to be tailored in each country's context and owned by the government, civil society, communities, and the people. What worked in other countries may not necessarily fit in Kuwait. In this regard, United Nations is also a learning entity. We learn from Kuwaitis as well. And our main development partner within Kuwait is the General Secretariat for the Supreme Council for Planning and Development. And in fact, GSSCPD has been leading even regionally and then globally, the utilization of behavioral insights to public policies. It's a really innovative ideas, so-called low-cost, high-impact investment, ensuring and supporting the implementation of various public policies around sustainable development. Also, the government of Kuwait, and together with the civil society and the private sector, have been preparing for the VNR on SDG report, which will be submitted in July this year in New York at the high-level political forum. I also want to note on this sustainable development that the Kuwaiti private sector have been very active in applying ESG and SDG impact investment in order to create a critical impact for the achievement of SDGs.
Having Kuwait as a member in the United Nations only reflects Kuwait's excellent humanitarian role, excellent philanthropy role, and excellent player and solid member of this organization. If I would like to categorize the relationship and the partnership between UNHCR and Kuwait, which has now marked 32 years, it's a partnership of solidarity, a partnership of prosperity. We are only growing stronger in our partnership with the state of Kuwait. It's a key humanitarian player. If we look into the past 10 years, Kuwait has marked as a top humanitarian donor in the Middle East, North Africa, named as a humanitarian hub. Sheikh Sabah, peace be upon his soul, named as a humanitarian leader. And when we look now, let's not talk about the past, let's talk now. Look at the earthquake support, Turkey and Syria. Kuwait is one of the top donors for this earthquake. Almost $97.7 million has been allocated by Kuwait to support victims. So we congratulate Kuwait for, and we congratulate the United Nations of having Kuwait as one of its members, and congratulate us for this great partnership with the Kuwait.
September 9, 2014 is considered one of the most important days for the state of Kuwait and the United Nations. It is the anniversary of naming Kuwait by the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, as a humanitarian center, and the late Emir Sabah al-Ahmad al-Jaber al-Sabah, may God rest his soul, as the humanitarian leader.
Kuwait, the refugee cause has and continue to be as one of the top priorities for the humanitarian giving of Kuwait at the level of government and for the Kuwaiti people in its private and public sector. More than $500 million has been allocated by Kuwait to support refugees, not only in the region, not only the Syria situation, not only the Iraq situation, not only the Yemen situation. It has gone beyond. It supported Afghanistan crisis. It supported around 1 million Rohingya refugees until now displaced in Cox's Bazar without any prospects for solutions. Kuwait is one of the, when this situation of the Rohingya refugees is only going down in terms of interest, we find Kuwait and Kuwaitis still think of these forgotten crises and still is one of the big donors for this situation. Kuwait supported the Afghanistan emergency, as well as we currently heard of the Sudan support of Kuwait, which of course, as we all know, it was a pioneer and one of the first. So refugees remain high on Kuwait agenda, the humanitarian cause, and that also translates the strong partnership with us as a UN agency mandated to protect refugees.
The recognition of the UN to the state of Kuwait is an appreciation to the state of Kuwait, leader, government, and nation for upholding all qualities and concept of humanity mentioned above, reflected in actions done by Kuwait since its membership with the United Nations in 1963.
Kuwait is a major player in the fields of political solutions, peace building, and development. It has cooperated with the United Nations to solve regional and global issues, which led the foundations for the long-term partnership, especially with Kuwait, known by its preventive diplomacy and moderation. Regarding the International Organization for Migration, our partnership with the state of Kuwait goes back more than 30 years. Kuwait was the starting point for our cooperation with other Gulf countries. Kuwait is an essential partner for our humanitarian work around the world. Recently, for example, during the Turkey-Syria earthquake, Kuwait provided the United Nations with around $90 million to provide support to people who were affected and survived the earthquake and its consequences. This is crucial and important support for us in order to be able to continue our operation in places that are affected by the crisis. Last year as well, we have received funding for Afghanistan, for Ukraine, and for Pakistan. This humanitarian assistance now is much more needed than before, especially that crises around the world, unfortunately, are increasing, and the needs of people are also increasing. When it comes to migrants, Kuwait has been among the first countries in the Gulf who have established a law for protection of the domestic worker. They have also established a department for counter-trafficking. They have established a shelter for vulnerable migrant workers, and we have been working with them on several areas on migration governance, including labor migration as well. In 2018, Kuwait adopted the Global Compact on Migration, and this is a milestone when it comes to migration governance in the country. And for sure, there is a lot that can be still done, and that's why we are still here. We are collaborating with the government, with the institutions and the partners in order to ensure that migration governance is implemented, that anything that is related to migrants, temporary contractual worker, we are providing the technical support. Lastly, Kuwait's partnership with the United Nations is strategic and strong, and it aims to achieve common goals and interests, and I'm sure that it will remain as such for the future.
We are proud to announce that we have recently signed an agreement with the Arab Fund. It's a regional entity located in Kuwait, chaired by Kuwait. And it comes exactly as part of our objectives is to expand partnership and to diversify our partnership. And we are hoping that this will be proceeded with signing an agreement of support of refugees in Iraq and in Tunisia, as well as in some other Arab countries. We continue to explore new partners. We continue to tap upon new charitable organizations that looks into supporting refugees as one of its priorities. And there are many here in Kuwait.
Since its admission to the United Nations on 14 May 1963, the state of Kuwait has been pursuing a peaceful and balanced policy in its relations with others based on the principles and objectives of the United Nations Charter. Kuwait proceeds from its firm conviction and belief in the importance of not resorting to the use of threat of force to settle disputes, but rather resorting to dialogue to foster the values of tolerance and coexistence between the different civilizations, cultures, and religions. Kuwait maintains diplomatic and friendly relations with different countries and peoples of the world. These relations are based on the principles of mutual respect, non-interference in the internal affairs of other states, respecting sovereignty and common interests, as well as supporting various international mechanisms to further economic, social, cultural, and intellectual cooperation between states and peoples. Kuwait's humanitarian role is one of the main pillars of Kuwaiti diplomacy, emanating from its belief in the importance of supporting the peoples in countries facing harsh conditions as a consequence of natural or man-made disasters such as wars and armed conflicts.
The partnership between UNICEF and Kuwait is a robust strategic partnership among all GCC countries that extends for more than 22 years of cooperation and support, aiming to deliver humanitarian and aid to vulnerable children worldwide. This strategic partnership of 22 years and more has been demonstrating a huge and significant positive impact on in the field and on the ground, where Kuwait's generous contributions had been able to alleviate poverty levels for these children and their families, providing them with critical and basic needs, offering them child protection support, and also making sure to advocate and support them with their basic human rights of education, nutrition, and also health.
Kuwait increased the voluntary contributions it provides to the United Nations specialized programs, funds, and agencies, most important among which are the United Nations Central Emergency Relief Fund, CRF, managed by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, UN Women. Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR.
Now, as UNDP in Kuwait, because the contribution and everything is from the government of Kuwait to the UNDP, and it's for Kuwait itself, normally we cherish the nationality and also the national ownership of the government for all of the projects. So for each country, one of which is Kuwait, they have their national plans and strategies, of which they have priorities that are planned on a yearly basis and on 5-year basis or on further years. For this, we normally sit together with the government, represented by GSSCPD, because our counterpart represented and assigned by the government here in Kuwait is GSSCPD. In addition, of course, for the protocol and other diplomatic issues, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this is why we normally mention GSSCPD, because they are the ones who work hand in hand with us on each and every single project that we do in Kuwait.
Well, as you may know, Kuwait has been a member in ILO since 1961. So even before it has became a member in the UN agency. So considering the leading role that Kuwait play in the region, this office was established since 1970. In the purpose to enhance the cooperation between the Kuwait government and other social partners in Kuwait, also to have an office in the GCC region. So since that date, the office was working closely with all of our social partners in Kuwait, government, employers, and workers to achieve the common goal between all parties, which is decent work in Kuwait.
UNICEF's office in Kuwait was established in 2020, focusing on two main pillars. The first pillar oversees the early childhood development activities, interventions, and policies, while the second pillar for UNICEF Kuwait manages the relationship, the strategic relationship between UNICEF and private public sector, especially the Kuwaiti government and other private sector donors and partners. We aim to, from this partnership with the public and private sector, to mobilize resources, also mobilize commitments, and also advocate for children's rights and needs in the locally, in the region, in the MENA region basically, and also worldwide.
Kuwait's relations with international organizations started a year before it gained its political independence in 1961 through its participation and membership in a number of key international organizations such as the World Health Organization, International Labour Organization, and the Universal Postal Union. After attaining membership to the United Nations in 1963, the state of Kuwait participated effectively in the various activities and meetings of the organization and its agencies. It supported the right of peoples to self-determination and decolonization in all its forms and manifestations. The state of Kuwait also joined the movement of non-aligned countries during that crucial historical period, in which numerous countries in Asia and Africa gained their political independence and attained membership to the United Nations. The state of Kuwait was active in seeking membership in the various key United Nations organs and their committees such as the Security Council 1978-1979, the Economic and Social Council 1967, 1969, 1992, 1994, and 2013 to 2015, and the Human Rights Council 2011 to 2014, as well as membership in a large number of international committees and other organs, wherein it positively contributed to the activities of these organs, supported all the endeavors aiming at the promotion of cooperation and coordination of international efforts, and has adhered to implementing the decisions of these organs.
Well, it's a partnership that is solid, and it's a partnership of prosperity. We're only growing closer and closer as partners with Kuwait. We're not going back, we're moving forward. And I would like to thank the Kuwaitis, public, private, the government, for their high sense of philanthropy that is unique to this beloved country.
Kuwait hosts the United Nations House, which was inaugurated by the Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, in 2009, and that houses the offices and representations of a number of specialized UN agencies and other international organizations, such as the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, United Nations Human Settlements Programme, UN Habitat, the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, International Organization for Migration, IOM, International Labour Organization, ILO, and the World Bank, WB. These organizations enjoy all the facilities and the logistical support that the government of Kuwait provides with a view to enable the organizations to perform their functions and carry out their responsibilities in a safe and appropriate environment. Within the framework of Kuwait's support and backing to the United Nations, activities in the field of maintaining international peace and security, Kuwait also hosts the headquarters and offices of international political missions in the region, the United Nations Assistance Mission in Iraq, UNAMI, and the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA. The offices of both missions receive all the needed facilities and enjoy a distinguished relation with the relevant official authorities of the country.
Naturally, every agency of the UN work towards achieving the countries that they reside in order to make this partnership a successful one. In our case, we found that Kuwait geographical location, has resulted in generating sand dust storms in Kuwait, and these sand dust storm affects the general health, economy and environment of Kuwait in a negative way. Therefore, UN Habitat signed a contract with the Kuwait Fund in order to rehabilitate the hotspots inside Iraq, which leads to the sand dust storms affecting Kuwait and all the Gulf countries. We look at this partnership as in a very positive way. We are very proud of it because this project in particular is one of its first. It is first of its kind in the Arabian region, and also it is first of its kind in this part of Asia.
The Kuwait is known to be a very generous contributor to global emergencies wherever they have occurred. And very recently in Turkey and in Syria, this drastic earthquake which struck the communities and caused a lot of casualties, the Kuwait government did come forward with a very generous contribution. And through World Health Organization, about $15 million were contributed to these two countries, which would be used for rebuilding the health systems, for the nutrition, as well as for the mental health of the communities which have been affected by earthquake. So this contribution came at the right time, and a lot of relief work would be carried out through this contribution, not only in the short term, but also in the longer term for rehabilitation of those communities.
Over the past 7.5 decades, there has been extraordinary progress in protecting people from disease and destruction, including smallpox, eradication, reducing the incidence of polio by 99%, saving millions of lives through childhood immunization, declines in maternal mortality, and improving health and well-being for millions more. In Kuwait, over the years, this partnership has resulted in many successful initiatives and programs, including the establishment of the WHO Kuwait Country Office, which further strengthened the collaboration between the organization and the Ministry of Health, enabling them to work together more effectively to improve health outcomes.
It is the mandate of WHO to work with and in support of Ministry of Health, and over the last year, we have had extensive discussions with all the stakeholders, including the Ministry of Health, to chart out a broader map of collaboration. And some priorities were identified by the Ministry of Health, in which the WHO country office and rest of the WHO would be working in near future. Just to name a few, these are supporting the health systems, the quality of the care which is being delivered to the people of Kuwait. Also the emergency preparedness apparatuses and structures which were developed during the COVID-19 and would be further strengthened in order to ensure that the state of Kuwait is in a good state of preparedness if another emergency strikes the country. Non-communicable diseases and the stress and the diseases related to this are also a priority for this country and for the joint work. The impact of environment change, the climate change on health is also a priority area for this 5 years work. Empowering the health sector through better training of human resource and the governance structures is another area. Similarly, the digitalization and the use of the digital health for well-being of the people is again something which the two would be working on. And finally, building on Kuwait's multilateral leadership to enhance the cooperation at global level and prioritizing or positioning Kuwait at global health scenario is one of the key priorities in the next 5 years.
WHO and the Ministry of Health remain committed to working together to address health challenges that the country may face and make progress towards achieving the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. Kuwait, 15 June 2021, the World Health Organization, WHO, opened a country office in Kuwait in a move set to strengthen its presence and cooperation with the government to support its effort in advancing the health and well-being of the country's population. The newly established office will enable WHO to work on the ground with United Nations agencies, partners, the authorities, and other stakeholders in health, development, and other sectors to foster public health collaboration at the national, regional, and international levels.
The WHO office in the state of Kuwait was formally inaugurated on 15th of June 2021 by the Ministry of Health Kuwait, and the Director General and the Regional Director also participated in the inauguration ceremony. Since the office inauguration, the WHO has been very active in supporting the Ministry of Health and the Government of Kuwait in strengthening the health systems through giving capacity building as well as other technical support wherever it was required. It not only works with the Ministry of Health and the other ministries of the government, but also the other stakeholders like academia, the private sector, the civil society, and the communities in general. There have been so many projects, so many activities in the past 1.5 years where the government and the WHO, not only the country office, but through the country office, also the regional office and headquarters have been participating in supporting the health and the well-being of the people of Kuwait. So hopefully with this presence and the continued presence in this country, this collaboration will further strengthen and there would be more fruits of this collaboration for the people of Kuwait.
Kuwait has long been an influential and strategic member state and partner for WHO in the Eastern Mediterranean region. Kuwait contributed to and enhanced the global and regional response to the COVID-19, while the Ministry of Health led a well-coordinated multi-sectoral response to the pandemic within the country and strengthened national capacity across all levels of government. Commemoration of the 75th anniversary of World Health Organization (WHO) on World Health Day, 7 April, WHO is proud to celebrate its long-standing collaboration with Kuwait.
It is very heartening to know that WHO has recently declared that corona pandemic is no longer a threat, a global threat or an emergency. That doesn't mean that the corona has disappeared from the face of the earth, but it doesn't pose a threat, a public health threat to the countries. Now, this has been only possible with relentless efforts of all the member states and the World Health Organization together to contain this pandemic, to deal with the various aspects which were brought out during the last 2 years. State of Kuwait played a very key role among other member states in contributing and supporting WHO to ensure that this pandemic is controlled. In terms of figures, there were since 2020 a generous contribution of more than $60 million to the pandemic fund and to other various funds created by WHO and partners for vaccines, for the treatments, for the new research, for health system strengthening, So this is a very major contribution over the last many years, and it is heartening and satisfying for the government and the people of Kuwait to know that the money which has been given contributed by the state of Kuwait has been used very effectively for the less advantaged communities, and they were provided with the materials, with medicine, with vaccines through this contribution by the state of Kuwait. And alhamdulillah, now we are seeing that COVID is no more a public health emergency.
Within the environment, the United Nations Human Settlement Program, UN Habitat, launched the Greening Kuwait campaign for the 4th year in a row. The campaign aims to plant trees in commitment to environmental causes and efforts to boost carbon neutrality.
Kuwait climate is very arid, meaning it's very hot and dry in the summertime, and it is very cold as a desert in winter time. With the effect of climate change, Kuwait has been experiencing since 40 years ago desertification and a rise of sand dust storms in Kuwait. Therefore, we started in 2019 the Kuwait Plants campaign, involving many sectors of the society. Our main partner is the KPC, which is the oil sector in Kuwait. We involve volunteers and anyone who is interested in joining this campaign. Greening open public spaces is not something new in the world, but in Kuwait, as being a desert country, it is more important because it leads to increasing levels of oxygen, improving the climate of Kuwait by providing shadow and shade and humidity in many areas in Kuwait. It's been very successful. This is the 4th year of the campaign. It achieves the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm happy to say that we have received so many positive feedbacks from not only inside Kuwait but outside of Kuwait. And the Kuwait office for the Gulf countries have received invitations from different countries in the region to replicate the experience of Kuwait greening. I think in the future we will do and expand our efforts in newly constructed areas in Kuwait.
The partnership outcome is to develop a whole-of-government effort to position Kuwait as a major player in global bodies and international cooperation efforts. The deliverables expected from UN-supported policy advice and programs are increased focus and impact of official development assistance, increased focus and impact of foreign direct investment (FDI) for SDG-related initiatives in partner countries, and effective and efficient peace-building initiatives and internationally recognized capacity and infrastructure for conflict resolution.
There is a national plan for the Kuwait, and we work together on finding priorities and finding projects that match the plans. For example, for the last 5 to 7 years, we were working on the anti-corruption. We were working on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs projects like the licensing of the vehicles. We were working on the disability and how to include or to have inclusive of people with disabilities, so the strategy of the authority for people with disability. The same with the environment, women empowerment, and also we have a main project which is the junior professional officers, which is nationals of Kuwait working with the UN worldwide.
The government of Kuwait aspires to a strengthened partnership with the United Nations agencies, programs, and funds under a new strategic partnership framework 2019-2025. Under this framework, the government and the United Nations commit to implementing Kuwait Vision 2035 and to work together towards the Sustainable Development Goals and to jointly enhance awareness and advocacy about Kuwait's international contributions to peace building, humanitarian support, and development cooperation.